I gotta, I'm in,
Hello, welcome to tonight's stream. Firstly, it is stream number 23. So, this is a good amount of time. And it is also a Friday. So, today we're going to be, number one, trying something different. But number two, we're just going to be chilling down. Right? We're going to be winding down. And the way we're going to be doing that is by reading some sci-fi. But before that, what's up Akshit? You're the first comment, bro. What's up Anirudh? What's up Chirag? What's up Murli? Sahil, what's up? What's up everyone? Good to see you all here on this Friday. This is 23. It's day 23 of our streams. What you just saw, the beautiful, beautiful artwork. This artwork here was done by Priyanshi. You can find her handle just right here. She's a part of the Avalon Pro League's game dev team. So this was actually made in Unity. So there is a good chance that we might actually be able to go to this dorm room in VR. Right? That is what that means. Slowly but steadily, the bro metaverse gets more and more real. We're going to be reading some sci-fi today. Okay. It's Chashme mode from the start today, right? We're going to jump in very heavy, which is we have a bunch of reading to do. It is a short story that I've picked for all of you today. We're going to be reading a short sci-fi story together. It's actually one of my favorite sci-fi stories, but my only concern is will we be able to finish it on today's stream? So that is left to be seen. All right. The story I'm going to be reading is, any guesses? Does anybody want to guess what that story is? I have it open in front of me. I'm just loading it up to page 1. But can anybody guess? We are reading some sci-fi. Okay. I will give you that hint. It is quite popular, actually. It's quite popular, this author. It is Some more clues. Some more clues would be um, been recommended by a bunch of people, including Varun. Varun loves this book. So do I. Let's see. Any guesses? Space is fake. Not space is fake, bro. Not space is fake. We're going to be reading Ted Chiang. We're going to be reading Understand by Ted Chiang. Okay. And let me just quickly show you what that looks like, right? This is what it is. This is the book that we're going to be reading. It's by Ted Chiang. The book overall is called Stories of Your Life and Others. Within that, there's a short story called Understand. Quite short. I think it's like about 25 pages overall. We're going to be reading this today. One of my absolute favorite short stories, okay, sci-fi short stories. So we're going to be getting into that today. Moj kar di, bros. Did I say Unity? I said Unreal Engine, bro, not Unity. I didn't say Unity, bro. Unreal Engine. Yeah, it's fine. It's an Unreal Engine, of course. Snow Crash is very long, bro. It would have been cool, but it is really long. And today, hopefully, we can get through this entire thing. There's some chance that we might extend today's stream. We started a little late as well. It was because I was closing all the tabs from yesterday's video. But you know what? Before we get into it, no milk today. We had milk as our stream drink yesterday. And I've run out of milk, bro. Sorry for that ASMR. I hope I didn't break your earphones. So let's read, okay? We're going to be reading Ted Chiang. Can somebody just add that in the comments? Okay. I'll keep it highlighted for a while for the people who join in a little late. We're going to be reading Ted Chiang's Story of Your Life and Others. Specifically, we're going to be reading the story Understand. Dropped my Coke, bro. Dropped some Coke. Sorry. Too distracted. Okay, let's go. I'm just thinking, should I screen share the book while I'm reading it or should I just read it? Let's do this. All right, let me set this up. Right, I'm going to set it up. This is going to be our reading room for today. Right, we're going to be reading in this room. Let's see. Let's set it up like here. Okay, this is our reading room. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to add some text which says Understand by Ted Chiang. Right, here we go. This is what we're going to be reading today. Awesome, let's get started. Screen share or just read it. Okay, I'm going to just read it now and then I'll switch. Okay. Vipul saying play the audiobook. Bro, if you want to watch the audiobook, go watch the audiobook, bro. Why am I here then? So let's get started. We're going to be switching between both of those views. Okay. But yeah. Understand. One second, bro. Page width is too thin. And I want to read this in sepia. I think small, medium, font size. Done. Let's read this, bro. Understand by Ted Chiang. Story of Your Life and Others. Oops. Man, I'm really messing up this setup. A layer of ice. It feels rough against my face, but not cold. I've got nothing to hold on to. My gloves just keep sliding off it. I can see people on top running around, but they can't do anything. I'm trying to pound the ice with my fists, but my arms move in slow motion, and my lungs must have burst, and my head's going fuzzy, and I feel like I'm dissolving. I wake up screaming. My heart's going like a jackhammer. Christ, I pull off my blankets and sit on the edge of the bed. I couldn't remember that before. Before, I only remembered falling through the ice. The doctor said my mind had suppressed the rest. Now I remember it, and it's the worst nightmare I've ever had. I'm grabbing the down comforter with my fists, and I can feel myself trembling. I try to calm down, to breathe slowly, but sobs keep forcing their way out. It was so real, I could feel it. Feel what it was like to die. I was in that water for nearly an hour. I was more vegetable than anything else by the time they brought me up. Am I recovered? It was the first time the hospital had ever tried the new drug on someone with so much brain damage. Did it work? The same nightmare. Again and again. After the third time, I know I'm not going to sleep again. I spend the remaining hours before dawn worrying. Is this the result? Am I losing my mind? Tomorrow's my weekly checkup with the resident at the hospital. I hope he'll have some answers. I drive into downtown Boston, and after half an hour, Dr. Hooper can see me. I sit on a gurney in an examining room behind a yellow curtain. Jutting out of the wall at the waist height is a horizontal flat screen, adjusted for tunnel vision so it appears blank from my angle. The doctor types at the keyboard, presumably calling up my file, and then starts examining me. As he's checking my pupils with a penlight, I tell him about my nightmares. Did you ever have any Did you ever have any before the accident, Leon? He gets out a little mallet and taps at my elbows, knees, and ankles. Never. Are these a side effect of the drug? Not a side effect. The hormone K therapy regenerated a lot of damaged neurons, and that's an enormous change that your brain has to adjust to. The nightmares, the fucking nightmares, are probably just a sign of that. Is this permanent? It's unlikely, but once your brain gets used to having all these pathways again, you'll be fine. Now touch your index finger to the tip of your nose and then bring it to my finger here. I do what he tells me. Next, he has me tap each finger to my thumb quickly. I have to walk a straight line as if I'm taking a sobriety test. After that, he starts quizzing me. Name the parts of an ordinary shoe. There's the sole, the heel, the laces, the tongue, the holes that the laces go through, the tongue underneath the laces. Okay, repeat this number 3917462. Dr. Hooper wasn't expecting that. What? 3917462. You used that number the first time you examined me when I was still an inpatient. I guess it's a number you test your patients with a lot. You weren't supposed to memorize it. It's meant to be a test of immediate recall. I don't intentionally memorize it. I just happen to remember it. Do you remember the number from the second time I examined you? I paused for a moment. 4081592. Most people can't retain so many digits if they've only heard them once. Do you use mnemonic tricks? No, I just always keep four numbers in the auto dialer. He goes to the terminal, taps at the numeric keyboard. He reads out a 14-digit number, and I repeat it back to him. You think you can do it backwards? I recite the digits in reverse order. He frowns and starts typing something into my file. Then, I'm sitting in front of a terminal in one of the testing rooms in the psychiatric ward. It's the nearest place Dr. Hooper could get some intelligence tests. There's a small mirror in one wall, probably with a video camera behind it. In case it's recording, I smile at it and I briefly wave. I always do that in the hidden cameras in ATMs. It's called symplectic. It's monologue in verse. Now I adjust the lighting to remove the shadows from the teeth mesh. Want to come along? Is this some kind of Shakespearean soliloquy? Too much. With that lighting, the outer edges will be too bright. I specify an upper limit for reflected light's intensity. No, it's a stream of consciousness piece and it alternates between 4 different meters. Iambics only one of them. The critics called it a 2D force. I didn't know you were such a fan of poetry. After checking all the numbers once more, I let the computer recalculate the interference pattern. Normally, I'm not, but this one seemed really interesting. How's it sound to you? Thanks, but I think we'll stick with the movie. So, folks, basically what's happening here, okay, this dude is at the hospital. This doctor's examining him, and he's like, what the fuck is happening? Why does this guy remember so good? Why is his recall so great? Okay. Um, and the doctor's just confused, bro. So this doctor's now running a bunch of tests more. So he's like, okay, fine, forget about it. You guys have fun. Maybe we can get together next week. We say goodbye and hang up. I wait for the recal to finish. Suddenly, it occurs to me what's just happened. I've never been able to do any serious editing while talking on my phone, but I had no trouble keeping my mind on both things at once. Will the surprises ever end? Once the nightmares were gone and I could relax, the first thing I noticed was the increase in my reading speed and comprehension. Quite meta, bro. Quite meta if you think about it. I was able to actually read the books on my shelves that I had meant to get around to but never had the time. Even the more difficult technical material. Back in college, I'd accepted the fact that I couldn't study everything that interested me, but it's exhilarating to discover that maybe I can. I was positively gleeful when I bought an armload of books the other day. Yo, so this guy goes home and he's like, yo, all this shit I've been procrastinating. Suddenly, I'm enjoying it, right? He reads everything, including his college textbooks. Just sitting there, back from the hospital, reading some H.C. Verma, solving some physics, right? I'm assuming. And now I find I can concentrate on two things at once, something I never would have predicted. I stand up at my desk and shout out loud. 1 second. I shout out loud, all right? Really loud. 1 second, dude. I lost my place in the book. As if I stand and shout out loud, as if my favorite baseball team has just surprised me. The neurologist, Dr. Shea, has taken over my case because he wants to take the credit, right? And this guy's like really friendly. So he asked me into his office to have a talk. He sits down and he's like, how do you feel about the increase in your intelligence? He asks. I'm very pleased about it. Of course. Good. So far, we found no adverse effects of the hormone K therapy. You don't require any further treatment for the brain damage from your accident. However, we're conducting a study to learn more about the hormone's effect on intelligence. If you're willing, we'd like to give you a further injection of the hormone and then monitor the results. Suddenly, he's got my attention. Finally, something worth listening to. Yeah, I'd be willing to do that, I say. You understand, this is purely for Okay, let me get my doctor voice, bro. You understand that this is purely for investigational purposes, not therapeutic. You may benefit from it with further gains in your intelligence, but this is not medically necessary for your health. I understand. I suppose I have to sign some form. Yes, but we can also offer you some compensation for participating in this study. I don't know where this accent is coming from, bro. He names a figure, but I'm barely listening. Yeah, that's fine. I'm imagining where this might lead, what it means for me, and a thrill runs through me. And we'd also like you to sign a confidentiality agreement. This drug is enormously exciting, but we don't want any announcements made prematurely. Certainly. Has anybody been given additional injections before? No, of course not. You're the first guinea pig. I can assure you there haven't been any harmful side effects. Not at all. What sort of effects did they experience? It's better if we don't plant any suggestions in your mind. You might imagine you were experiencing the symptoms I mentioned, so I can't tell you. Shreya's very comfortable with the doctor knows best routine. I keep pushing, but I'm asking, can you tell me? And, he's just like, every individual is different. You shouldn't base your expectations on what's happened to others. I conceal my frustration. Very well, doctor. Okay, I'm going to take this. What's up, Shatir? What's up, bro? Welcome. So, here's my scene, okay? If Shea doesn't want to tell me about this hormone K, I can find out on my own. I've got the fucking internet, bro. So, from my terminal at home, I log on to the data net, okay? Extreme hackerman shit. I access the FDA's public database and I start browsing their current investigational new drug applications, their INDs, that need to be approved before human trials begin. Because I'm assuming I'm getting this early. The application for this hormone K was submitted by Sorensen Pharmaceutical, a company that researches synthetic hormones and that encourage neuron regeneration in the central nervous system. So, I skim these results. Um, they've done these tests on oxygen deprived dogs and baboons, and the animals recovered perfectly. The toxicity was low, the long term observation, everything was chill. The results of cortical samples were provocative, right? What happened when we saw these samples was these brain damaged animals, they grew replacement neurons with more dendrites, but nothing else, right? Everything else remained unchanged, no harm. So the researchers, their conclusion was that hormone K replaces the damaged neurons, not only damaged, it replaces only damaged neurons and not healthy ones, right? So it doesn't affect it any adverse way. So, no change in brain metabolism, all of this stuff is all good. And then for the human clinical trials, the Sorensen researchers, they outlined protocols. Okay. Certain protocols were outlined. For testing it on healthy subjects. Okay, so here are the human tests they've done so far. They've done on stroke victims, Alzheimer's, and people like this guy, or me actually, in this situation. Like me, in a persistent vegetative state. I've just had an accident, right? This was a experimental drug. I can't access the progress reports for those trials, however. Even with the patient anonymity, like only the participating doctors have clearance. So it's super confidential. And the animal studies, they don't talk about what happens, right? So my assumption is the deep coma patients would undergo the greatest improvements, of course, but I would need to see the progress of the other patients to confirm this theory. Now, the next question is, with every dosage that I get, will I reach a plateau, or will the intelligence, will the effects keep increasing with every dosage? I'll only find out. I'll find out soon, but I'll find out sooner than the doctors. Okay, let's continue. So I'm not really nervous. Okay, I feel quite relaxed. I'm just lying on my stomach, breathing very, very slowly. My back is numb. They gave me a local anesthetic and then injected the hormone K intraspinally. So, like here, back in my spine. And I'm just lying down, okay? I'm not standing. Just imagine that. And intravenous wouldn't work. Like, you can't inject it into my veins because the hormone can't get past the blood-brain barrier. The first such injection I can recall having, right? But they tell me that I've had two before. First, while I was in the coma, and then second, when I regained consciousness, but I had no cognitive ability. More nightmares. More nightmares. They're not all actually violent, but they're really the nightmares. They're getting really bizarre. Okay, mind-blowing dreams. The most mind-blowing that I've ever had. And in these dreams, there's nothing that I recognize, right? But I screaming, dude, fucking screaming, and flailing around in bed. But this time, I know that the nightmares will pass because I'm kind of used to this. Now, there are several psychologists at the hospital who are studying me, and it's interesting to see how they're analyzing my intelligence. So, one doctor perceives my skills in terms of components, so like acquisition, retention, performance, transfer. Another looks at me from the angles of mathematical and logical reasoning, linguistic communication, and spatial visualizations. I'm reminded of my college days when I watched these specialists, each with a new pet theory, contorting the evidence to fit it. I'm even less convinced by them now than I was back then. fuck college, bro. They still have nothing to teach me. Now, of their categorizations, none of the categorizations are fruitful, right? There's no point denying it. I'm just good at everything, right? This dose has clearly done something. So, I could be studying a new class of equation, right? These are some of the tests that I did. I could be studying a new class of equation, grammar of a foreign language, the operation of an engine. In each case, I know everything fits together. All the elements, they cooperate really beautifully. And in each case, I don't have to consciously memorize the rules um, and then try to mechanically apply them. I don't have to do that. I can just perceive how the system behaves as a whole, as an entire entity. And of course, I'm aware of all the details and the individual steps, but they require so little concentration that it almost feels intuitive. Now, I'm still trying to do research. So penetrating computer security is really dull, right? But it's not fun at all. It's just tugging on different doors of a locked house till you find an improperly installed lock, right? Useful, but like not interesting. Now, getting into FDA's private database was easy, right? Hacker shit right here. I played with one of the hospital wall terminals, which was running the visitor information program, and it displays maps and staff directory. And then I was able to break down the program to the system level, write a decoy program to mimic the opening screen, and I just left the terminal open. And eventually, one of the doctors entered their password, entered the restore screen, and the password was on my decoy. So now, with the doctor's account, I had the clearance to view this FDA patient record database, and what I found will shock you. Okay, this is not a joke. This is not a joke. Okay, I found out in the phase 1 trials on healthy volunteers, no effect. Okay. However, with the phase 2 clients, phase 2 clinical clients trials, I saw weekly reports of 82 patients, different number. All of them were treated with hormone K. Most of them were victims of like a stroke or Alzheimer's. Some of them were coma cases. And all these reports, one thing that I can see is that those with greater brain damage display greater increases in intelligence when they take this dose. And the PET scan, it reveals heightened brain metabolism. And the animal studies didn't provide a precedent for this. But I think the concept here is critical mass, which is animals fall below some critical mass in terms of the synapses, and their brains only support limited abstraction and gain nothing from the additional synapses. But humans, we have bigger brains, we exceed that critical mass. And human brains support full self awareness. And as these records indicate, they use these new synapses to the full possible extent. So the most exciting records are those of the newly begun investigational studies using a few of the patients who volunteered. Additional injections increase the further intelligence, but it depends, okay? It depends on this initial damage. Now here's the scene, okay? Here's the fucking scene, okay? Out of all the patients that were originally in deep coma states, I'm the only one who's gotten a third injection. So out of everyone, I've gained more synapses than anybody else who was previously studied. And now it's an open question. How high will my intelligence go? And it's exciting, dude. My heart is pounding. So now, playing with these doctors is getting more and more tedious. They treat me like I'm some kind of idiot, like a patient who's exhibiting these signs but is still a patient. And for the neurologists, they just think I'm a source of PET scan images, right? And occasionally they take a vial of my cerebrospinal fluid. The psychologists, now they have the opportunity to gain some insight into my thinking through their interviews, but they can't shed their preconception of me as someone out of his depth. An ordinary man awarded gifts that he can't appreciate, okay? But the doctors, they don't appreciate what's happening. They are the ones who don't appreciate what's happening because they think that the real world performance can't be enhanced by a drug. They think that this ability exists only according to this, artificial yardstick, and they're measuring with these weird ways. But those ways of measurement are not good. They're not only contrived, it's too short, right? I'm just getting consistently perfect scores, and they don't have anything to say from this, right? Now, the test scores merely capture a shadow of the real changes occurring. If only the doctors could feel what's going on in my head, how much I'm recognizing, all these patterns that I'm seeing, how many uses I can see for that information. Far from being a laboratory phenomenon, my intelligence is practical and effectual. Now, with my near total recall and ability to correlate, I can assess a situation immediately and choose the best course of action for my purposes. I'm never indecisive, and only theoretical, topics pose a challenge. So, at this point, no matter what I study, I can see patterns. I see patterns, okay? I see the gestalt, the melody within the notes in everything. In mathematics and science, art, music, psychology, sociology. And as I read the texts, I can only think that the authors are plodding along. I'm reading this and I get bored, right? Because they're plodding along from one point without, they're groping for connections they can't see. They're a crowd of people unable to read music, peering at the score. So, as glorious as these patterns are, now my appetite is increased. There are other patterns waiting to be discovered, gestalts of another scale entirely. With respect to those, I'm blind myself. All my sonatas are just isolated data points by comparison. I have no idea what form such gestalts might assume. But that'll come in some time. I want to find them, I want to comprehend them. And at this point, I want this more than anything I've ever wanted before. Back, okay? We're back to the doctor's office. Now we have a visiting doctor named Clausen, and he doesn't behave like the other doctors. Judging by his manner, he's accustomed to wearing a mask of blandness with his patients, and he's a bit uncomfortable today. He has this air of friendliness, but it's not as fluent as the other doctors. Now, this is what he tells me, okay? The test works this way, Leon. You'll read some descriptions of various situations, each presenting a problem. After each one, I want you to tell me what would you do to solve that problem. Okay, I've had this kind of test before. Fine. He types a command, and the screen in front of me fills with text. I read the scenario. It's a problem in scheduling and prioritizing. It's realistic, which is unusual. Scoring such a test is too arbitrary for most researchers' tastes. I wait for some time before giving my answer. Clausen is still very surprised at my speed. That's very good, Leon. He hits a key on his computer. Try this one. We continue with more scenarios. Now, as I'm reading the fourth one, Clausen is really careful to display only professional detachment. Now, my response to this problem is of special interest to him, but he doesn't want me to know. The scenario involves office politics and fierce competition for a promotion. I realize who Clausen is. He's a government psychologist, perhaps military. Perhaps, probably part of the CIA's Office of Research and Development. I think this test is meant to gauge hormonescape potential for producing strategists, right? Strategists. And that's why he's uncomfortable with me. He's used to dealing with soldiers and government employees whose job is to follow orders. Okay, so it's likely, right, that the CIA wants to retain me as a subject for more tests. Now, they may do the same with other patients, depending on the performance. And after that, they'll get some volunteers. They'll starve their brains of oxygen, treat them with hormone K, and they'll scale this up. And I certainly don't, bro, I'm just not interested. Don't want to be a CIA resource. But I've already demonstrated enough of my ability. Now, all I can do is give wrong answers. I have to downplay my skills. So I offer a poor course of action. Okay, Clausen is kind of disappointed. Anyway, we move on. I take longer now and I give weak responses. Sprinkled among these harmless questions are the critical ones, right? The ones about avoiding hostile corporate takeover, another about mobilizing people to prevent the construction of a coal burning plant. I miss each of these questions. Now, Clausen dismisses me when the test ends. He's trying to formulate his recommendations. And, if I had shown my true abilities, the CIA would recruit me immediately. But now my uneven performance will reduce that eagerness. Um, but still, the potential returns are too much to ignore hormone K. So the situation has now changed, but I need to make plans because if the CIA tries to retain me, then I'm not super interested in that, bro. Not at all. So 4 days later, I go back to this doctor, Shreya, and she's really surprised, right? She's really surprised. She asks that, hey, do you want to withdraw from the study? And I say, yes, effective immediately. I'm going back to work now. If it's a matter of compensation, then I'm sure, no, money is not the problem. I've simply just had enough of these tests. Now, I know the tests become tiring, but we're learning a great deal and we appreciate your participation. It's not just, I don't give a fuck, dude. I don't know how much you're learning from these tests. It doesn't change my decision. I don't want to continue. And I just cut him off. And I'm like, I know that I'm still bound by the NDA, the confidentiality agreement. But if you want to sign something confirming, then send it to me. Goodbye. 2 days later, I get a call. Leon, you have to come in for an examination. I've just been informed. Adverse side effects have been found in patients treated with hormone K at another hospital. He's lying. He would never tell me that over the phone. What kind of side effects? Loss of vision, excessive growth of the optic nerve, deterioration. The CIA must have ordered this when they heard that I had withdrawn from the study. Now, once I'm back in the hospital, Shreya will declare me mentally incompetent and confine me to their care. And then I'm going to be transferred to a government research institution. Okay, I'll come down right away. I say that, okay? Shreya is relieved that this discovery was convincing. Good. We can examine you as soon as you arrive. I hang up and turn on my terminal to check the latest information in the FDA database. There is no mention of any adverse effects on the optic nerve or anywhere else. I don't discount the possibility that it might happen in the future, but I'll discover them myself. It's time to leave Boston, where I am right now. I begin packing. I'll empty my bank accounts when I go. We've got cryptocurrencies now. We've got Bitcoin. Selling the equipment in my studio would generate more cash, but most of it is too large to transport. So I'll just take some of the smallest pieces. After a couple of hours, phone rings again. Leon, are you there? This is Dr. Shreya. We've been expecting you for quite some time. He'll try calling once more and then he'll send the orderlies in white suits or perhaps the police to pick me up. 7:30 p.m. Shreya is still in the hospital waiting for news about me. I turn the ignition key and pull out of my parking spot across the street from the hospital. Any moment now, he'll notice the envelope I slipped under the door to his office. As soon as he opens it, he'll realize it's from me. Greetings, Dr. Shreya. I say in my most supervillainy tone. I imagine you're looking for me. A moment of surprise, but no more than a moment. He'll regain his composure and alert security to search the building for me and check all departing vehicles. Then he'll continue reading. You can call off those burly orderlies who are waiting at my apartment. I don't want to waste their valuable time. You're probably determined to have the police issue an APB on me. Therefore, I've taken the liberty of inserting a virus in the DMV computer that will substitute information whenever my license plate number is requested. Of course, you could give a description of my car, but you don't even know what that looks like, do you? Leon. Whew. He'll call the police to have their programmers work on that virus. He'll conclude that I have a superiority complex based on the arrogant tone of the note and the very irritating supervillain accent. The unnecessary risk taken in returning to the hospital to deliver it, however, and then the pointless revelation of a virus which might otherwise have gone undetected. Shea will be mistaken though. Those actions are designed to make the police and CIA underestimate me, so I can rely on them not taking adequate precautions. After cleaning my virus from the DMV computer, the police programmers will assess my programming skills as good, but not great. And then they'll load the backups to retrieve my actual license number. This will activate a second virus, a far more sophisticated one, that will modify the backups and the active database. The police will be satisfied that they've got the correct license number and spend their time chasing that wild goose. At this point, okay, at this point, I am looking for another. My next goal, right, is to get another ampule of hormone K. And when I do this, the problem is that the CIA will get an idea of where I am and how capable I really am because it's difficult. And if I hadn't sent that note, the police would discover my virus later at a time when they'd know to take super stringent precautions when eradicating it. In that case, I might never be able to remove my license number from their files. Meanwhile, I check into a hotel and I'm working out of the room's datanet terminal. I've broken into the private database of the FDA. I've seen the addresses of the hormone K subjects and the internal communications. A clinical hold was instituted, no further testing, but the CIA has insisted on capturing me and assessing my threat potential before the FDA moves any further. Now, the FDA has asked all the hospitals to return the remaining ampules by courier. So I need to somehow intercept that shit and get an ampule before this happens. Now, the nearest patient is in Pittsburgh, so I reserve a seat on a flight leaving tomorrow morning, early in the morning. Then I check a map of Pittsburgh and make a request to the Pennsylvania Courier Company, right, for a pickup. So now I can intercept it. And finally, I sign up for several hours of CPU time on a supercomputer. Small side note, I don't know how big this is. Okay, so let's continue. What you're seeing on the page numbers here, it's the entire book, not the short story. Okay. I'm parked in a rental car around the corner from a skyscraper in Pittsburgh. My jacket pocket, I have a small circuit board with a keypad. And now I'm looking down the street in the direction the courier will arrive from. Half the pedestrians wear white masks, but visibility is good. I see it 2 intersections away. A late domestic van, courier painted on the side. It's not a high security courier, right? The FDA isn't that worried about me yet. Now I get out of my car, I begin walking towards the skyscraper, and the van arrives, shortly parks, and the driver gets out. And as soon as he's inside, I enter the vehicle. Now, it's just come from the hospital, and the driver's on his way to the 40th floor picking up a package, but he won't be back for at least 4 minutes. Welded to this door of the van is a large locker with a double layered steel walls and a door, and there's a polished plate on the door. The locker opens when the driver lays his palm, so it's fucking touch activated. The plate also has a data port in the side used for programming it. So you know what I'm about to do. Last night, I penetrated the service database for Lucas Security Systems, the company that sells handprint locks to Pennsylvania Courier. And there I found an encrypted file containing the codes to override their locks. I must admit that while penetrating computer security remains generally unaesthetic, certain aspects of it are indirectly related to very interesting problems in mathematics. For example, encryption normally requires years of supercomputer time. However, because of my increased intelligence, I was able to find a technique for factoring extremely large numbers. And now with that, a supercomputer could break this encryption in like just a couple of hours. So now I pull the circuit board from my pocket, connect it with a cable, tap in a 12-digit number, and the locker door swings open. By the time I'm back, they've responded and they've pulled all the files from the data net. But now I have the ampule, I have my belongings, and I drive to New York City. What we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. Okay. We're going to take a short break where we play a little bit of music for you. And then I'm going to be back as I check how much longer this story is. All right. In this short break, I'm going to be playing some relaxing lo-fi hip hop. And I'll see you in a minute and a half. Welcome back. Welcome back to our short story. Today we're reading Understand by Ted Chiang, and we're a bit through it, right? When we're, I won't say how much because I don't want to break that surprise, but let's continue. Here in the story, we've realized, right, that this hormone K, I'm the only person who's received three of them, 3 shots, and now I can feel my intelligence increasing. Now that this intelligence has increased, I've dropped out of that test. I don't want the CIA behind me and I'm trying to escape. I've left this note, right? Of course, they're going to try to catch me now, but it's me against them. And at this point, I am seeing patterns. So I've been able to hack into a courier van, and now I've taken some more of this hormone K. So now what's about to happen is I'm going to do tests on myself. And with this increased intelligence, I'm going to figure out. But before that, do you know what I need? I need to still live in this real world. I need money. What's the best way to make money if I am this smart? If you're thinking Bitcoin, if you're thinking crypto, your mind is in the right place. However, let's continue reading. Now, the fastest way for me to make money, oddly enough, is gambling. Now, horse races, I can handicap them, and without attracting too much attention, I can accumulate a good moderate sum, and then I take that sum and invest it in the stock market. So now I'm staying in a room in the cheapest apartment I could find near New York that has datanet outlets. Now I've arranged several false names under which to make my investments, and I keep changing them regularly. I'll spend some time on Wall Street so I can identify high yield, short term opportunities, mainly from the body language of brokers. I won't go more than a week um, because there are more significant matters to attend to, more gestalts beckoning my attention. As my mind develops, so does my control over my body. It's a misconception to think that during evolution, humans sacrifice physical skill in exchange for intelligence. Wielding one's body is a mental activity. So now, while my strength hasn't increased, my coordination is now well above average. I'm even becoming ambidextrous. So, moreover, now my powers of concentration, I have now the ability to make biofeedback techniques very effective, right? So, after comparatively little practice, I'm able to raise or lower my heart rate and blood pressure. So now it's time to escape the fucking CIA. I write a program to perform a pattern match for photos of my face, and I search for occurrences of my name. I then incorporate a virus scanning for all public display files on the internet. Right? We call it the data net in the story. The CIA will have the national datanet news briefs display my picture and identify me as a dangerously insane escaped patient, maybe a murderer. However, this virus will replace my photo with just video static, and I'm going to plant a similar virus in the FDA and CIA computers that searches for copies of my picture in any downloads that it's sent out to the police. And these viruses should be super immune to anything that the programmers there can come up with. Now, of course, Shreya and the other doctors are in consultation with the psychologists of the CIA, trying to guess where did I go? Where might have I have gone? My parents are dead, so the CIA is turning its attention to my friends, asking whether I've contacted them. They'll maintain surveillance on them in the event that I do. Now, this is sad. It's a regrettable invasion of their privacy. But, it's not really a pressing matter. It's quite unlikely that the CIA will treat any of their agents with hormone K to locate me, right? So I don't think they're going to do that. And, the reason for that is, like I am demonstrating, a super intelligent person is too difficult to control. However, I'll keep track of the other patients in case the government decides to recruit them against me. Now, the quotidian patterns of society, right, are being revealed to me without making an effort. I walk down the street watching people go about their business, and though not a word is spoken, the subtext is conspicuous. A young couple strolls by, the adoration of one bouncing off the tolerance of the other. Apprehension flickers and becomes steady as a businessman, fearful of his supervisor, begins to doubt a decision he made earlier today. A woman wears a mantle of simulated sophistication, but it slips when it brushes past the genuine article. As always, these roles one plays become recognizable only with greater maturity. To me, these people seem like children on a playground. I'm amused by their earnestness and embarrassed to remember myself doing those same things. Their activities are appropriate for them, but I couldn't bear to participate now. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Hormone K has changed me. I will deal with the world of normal humans only as needed to support myself. As each week passes, I acquire years of education every single week, assembling these even larger patterns. I view the tapestry of human knowledge from a broader perspective than anyone ever has before. And I'm able to fill gaps in the design where scholars never even noticed a lack. And I'm able to enrich the textures in places they felt were incomplete. The natural sciences have the clearest pattern. Physics admits of a lovely unification, not just at the level of fundamental forces, but when considering its extent and implications, right? So these classifications like optics, thermodynamics, right? Some HC Verma shit, bro. It's just straight jackets. These are preventing physicists from seeing all these countless intersections because they made these separate fields. Now, even putting aside these aesthetics, the practical applications that have been overlooked are crazy. Years ago, engineers could have been engineering, spherically symmetrical gravity fields. There's so much information here that's unused. But when I realized this, I'm also, I won't build such a device or any other because it would require too many custom built components. It's difficult, time consuming. And, I'm thinking I can make all these devices that gives me that strategic advantage over everyone else. But constructing it won't really give me any satisfaction. Like I already know how it works. So it wouldn't illuminate any new gestalts. I'm writing part of an extended poem as an experiment. After I've finished one canto, I'll be able to choose an approach for integrating the patterns within all the arts. I'm employing 6 modern and 4 ancient languages. They include most of the significant worldviews of human civilization. Each one of them provides different shades of meaning and poetic effects, and some of the juxtapositions are delightful. Each line of poem contains neologisms, born by extruding words through the declensions of another language. Yo, something's happening to my vocabulary too. If I were to complete the entire piece, it could be thought of as Finnegan's Wake multiplied by Pound's Cantos. However, here's the fucking scene, okay? The CIA interrupts my work. Now, they're baiting a trap for me. And after 2 months of trying, they've accepted that conventional methods just won't work. So they've turned to more drastic measures. The news services report that the girlfriend of a deranged murderer has been charged with aiding and abetting his escape. The name given is Connie Perrott, someone I was seeing last year. If it goes to trial, it's foregone conclusion that she'll be sentenced to a lengthy prison term. So now the CIA is hoping that I won't allow that. They expect me to attempt some kind of maneuver since it's personal and it'll expose me to capture. So now Connie's preliminary hearing is tomorrow. They'll ensure that she's released on bail to give me an opportunity to contact her. Then they'll saturate the area around her apartment, undercover agents, and they'll wait for me. Okay. So now I begin editing the first image on the screen. These digital photos are so minimal compared to hollows, but they serve the purpose. The photos taken yesterday show the exterior of Connie's apartment building. So I stake this out nearby intersections, the streets, and I move the cursor across the screen, drawing certain crosshairs, okay? Enter into hacker mode. Okay. I mark 6 locations. They indicate where CIA agents were waiting last night when Connie came back to her apartment. There's a window with lights out, the building diagonally opposite, there's a street vendor. Having been cued by the videotapes of me in the hospital, they know what to look for in male or ambiguous passerbys. They're looking for a confident level gait. Okay, they're looking to see if there's a person walking really confidently. Now, these expectations, it worked against them because I just lengthened my stride, bobbed my head up and down, reduced my arm motion, wore some atypical clothes, and they were sufficient for them to ignore me as I walked through the area. Now, at the bottom of one photo, I typed the radio frequency used by the agents for communication and an equation describing the scrambling algorithm. Once I finished, I transmit the images to the director of CIA. The implication is clear. I could kill his undercover agents at any time unless they withdraw. Now, to have them drop these charges against Connie and for a more permanent deterrent against these distractions, bro, I'll have to do some more work. Okay. I will have to do some more work. The problem now, pattern recognition. That's what it's all again. But now it's a little mundane. So now I'm going through thousands of reports, memos, correspondence, And each of these is a dot. It's a dot of color in a pointillist painting. And as I step back, these patterns, and I'm waiting for these lines and edges to emerge, the megabytes of data that I scanned constitute only a fraction of the complete records, but they were enough. What I found was rather ordinary, far simpler than the plot of a spy novel. The director of the CIA was aware of a terrorist group's plan to bomb Washington, D.C.'s metro system, and he let the fucking bombing occur. And he did it to gain congressional approving for the use of extreme measures against that group. And a congressman's son was among the casualties, and the CIA director was given a free hand in handling the terrorists. Now, while his plans aren't actually stated, they're quite clearly implied. So now these relevant memos, they make oblique references and they float in a sea of documents. But if an investigating committee saw all this, the evidence would be too much. It would be drowned out by the noise. However, a distillation of incriminating memos would certainly convince the press. So, I send all these memos, I list them out, and I send it to the director of the CIA with a note. Don't bother me, and I won't bother you. He'll realize that he has no alternative. This little episode has reinforced my opinion of the affairs of the world. I could detect these clandestine plots everywhere if I kept informed about current events, but none of them would be interesting. I shall resume my studies. Control over my body continues to grow. By now, I could walk on hot coals or stick needles in my arm if I was so inclined. However, my interest in Eastern meditation is limited to its application to physical control. No meditative trance I can attain is nearly as desirable to me as my mental state. When I assemble these gestalts of elemental data, that's the most pleasurable thing. So now I'm designing a new language. I've reached the limits of conventional languages, and now they frustrate my attempts to progress further. They lack the power to express concepts that I need, and even in their own domain, they're imprecise and wieldy. They're not even fit for speech, let alone thought. And the existing linguistic theory, useless, bro. I'll reevaluate basic logic to determine the suitable atomic components. Right? So I'm designing a language now. And this language will support a dialect that is co-expressive with all of maths, so that any equation I write will have a linguistic equivalent. However, math will be only a small part of the language, not the whole. Unlike Leibniz, I recognize symbolic logic's limits. Now, other dialects I have planned will be co-expressive with my notations for aesthetics and cognition. And this will be a time-consuming project, but the end result will clarify my thoughts enormously. And after I've translated everything that I know into this language, the patterns I seek should become evident. As I read this, I'm reminded of Rome research. Sounds like Rome research is what this guy would use. I pause in my work. Before I develop a notation for aesthetics, I must establish a vocabulary for all these emotions. I'm aware of many emotions beyond those of normal humans. I can see how limited their effective range is. And I don't deny the validity of the love, the angst that I once felt, but I do see them for what they were. Like the infatuations and depressions of childhood. They were just the forerunners of what I experience now. My passions now are more multifaceted. And as self knowledge increases, all emotions become exponentially more complex. And I must be able to describe them fully, right? Because words are limited at this point. So I need this language to be able to do that. And I need this if I even want to attempt what's ahead of me right now. So, of course, however, I actually experience intelligence I actually experience far fewer emotions than I could. My development is limited by the intelligence of those around me and the scant intercourse I permit myself with them. I am reminded of the Confucian concept of Ren. Ren says, inadequate, inadequately, it's conveyed by the idea of benevolence, that quality which is quintessentially human, which can only be cultivated through interactions with others, and which a solitary person cannot manifest. It's one of many such qualities. And here I am with people everywhere, yet not one to interact with. And because of that, I'm only a fraction of what a complete individual with my intelligence could be. I don't delude myself with either self pity or conceit. I can evaluate my own psychological state with the utmost objectivity and consistency. I know precisely which emotional resources I have and which I lack, and how much value I place on each. I have no regrets. My new language, okay, is taking shape. It's gestalt oriented, right? Which makes it beautifully suited for thought, but it's not impractical for writing or speech. This language I've invented only exists in the domain of thought. It wouldn't be transcribed in the form of words, arranged linearly, but a giant ideogram to be absorbed as a whole, like a mandala, for example. The intricacy of each ideogram would be commensurate with the amount of information contained. So, intricacy and information directly correlated. And I amuse myself with the notion of a colossal, huge ideogram that describes the entire universe. Now, the printed page is too clumsy and it's too static for this language. And the only serviceable media to express this language in would be video or holo, which is a time evolving graphic image. And speaking this language, would be out of the question because our human larynx has a very limited bandwidth. Now, my mind, it seethes with expletives from ancient and modern languages, and they taunt me with their crudeness. Earlier, I said the word fuck, right? And now I'm reminded that my ideal language would offer terms with sufficient venom to exactly express my present frustration. I cannot complete my artificial language. It's too large of a project for my present tools. Weeks of concentrated effort have yielded nothing usable, and I've attempted already to write it via bootstrapping by employing the rudimentary language that I've already defined to rewrite this language. Yet each new version only highlights its own inadequacies, forcing me to expand my ultimate goal, condemning it to the status of a holy grail at the end of a divergent infinite regress. This is no better than trying to create an ex nihilo. At this point, right, here's what I'm considering. I have my fourth ampule, right? That is something I still have. Every frustration I experience at this current plateau reminds me of the possibility for even greater heights. And now, of course, there's significant risks, right? The injection might be the one that causes brain damage or something even worse, insanity, right? All of this could come crashing down. And what if all of this is just temptation by the devil, perhaps? But still temptation. And I don't find a reason to resist this. And I would have a margin of safety if I injected myself in a hospital, or at least with someone standing by in my apartment. However, I imagine the injection will either be successful or cause irreparable damage. So I forgo these precautions. I order equipment from a medical supply company and assemble an apparatus for administrating the spinal injection by myself. It may take days for the full effects to become evident, so I'll confine myself to my bedroom. It's possible that my reaction will be violent. I remove breakables from the room and attach loose straps to the bed. The neighbors will interpret anything they hear as an addict howling. I inject myself and wait. My brain is on fire. My spine burns itself through my back. I feel near apoplexy. I am blind, deaf, insensate. I hallucinate. Seen with such preternatural clarity and contrast that, I see unspeakable horrors loom all around me. Not physical violence, not scenes of physical violence, but of psychic mutilation, mental agony and orgasm, terror and hysterical laughter. For a brief moment, perception returns. I'm on the floor, hands clenched in my hair, some unrooted tufts of hair lying around me. My clothes are soaked in sweat. I've bitten my tongue, and my throat is raw from screaming, I think. Convulsions have left my body badly bruised, and a concussion is likely. Given the contusions on my back, ah, but I feel nothing. Has it been hours or just moments? Then my vision clouds and the roar returns. Critical mass. Revelation. I understand the mechanism of my own thinking. I now precisely know how I know. My understanding is recursive. I understand the infinite regress of the self knowing, not by proceeding step by step endlessly, but by apprehending the limit. The nature of recursive cognition is clear to me. A new meaning of the term self aware. Fiat logos. I know my mind in terms of a language more expressive than any I had previously imagined. Like God creating order from chaos with an utterance. I make myself anew with this language. It is meta self descriptive and self editing. Not only can it describe thought, it can describe and modify its own operations as well. At all levels, what Gödel would have given to see this language, where modifying a statement causes the entire grammar to be adjusted. With this language, I can see how my mind is operating. I don't pretend to see my own neurons firing. Ugh. Such claims belong to John Lilly and his LSD experiments of the 60s. What I can do is perceive the gestalts. I see the mental structures forming, interacting. I see myself thinking, and I see the equations that describe my thinking. And I see myself comprehending the equations, and I see how the equations describe their being comprehended. I know how they make up my thoughts. These thoughts. Initially, I'm overwhelmed by all this input, paralyzed with awareness of myself. It's hours before I can control the flood of self describing information. I haven't filtered it away, nor have I pushed it to the background. It's become integrated into my mental processes for use during my normal activities. It'll be longer before I can take advantage of it effortlessly and effectively, the way a dancer uses her kinesthetic knowledge. All that I knew, all that I once knew theoretically about my mind, I now see detailed explicitly. The undercurrents of sex, aggression, and self preservation, translated by the conditioning of my childhood, clash with and are sometimes disguised as rational thought. I recognize all the causes of my every mood and the motives behind my every decision. What can I do with this knowledge? Much of what is conventionally described as personality is now at my discretion. The higher level aspects of my psyche define who I am now. I can send my mind into a variety of mental or emotional states, yet remain ever aware of the state and able to restore my original condition. Now that I understand the mechanisms that were operating when I attended to two tasks at once, I can now divide my consciousness, simultaneously devoting almost full concentration and gestalt recognition abilities to two or more separate problems, meta aware of all of them. What can't I do? I know my body afresh. It's as if it were an amputee stump suddenly replaced by a watchmaker's hand. Controlling my voluntary muscles is trivial. I have inhuman coordination. Skills that normally require thousands of repetitions to develop, I can learn in two or three. I find a video with a shot of a pianist's hands playing, and before long, I can duplicate the finger movements without a keyboard in front of me. Selective contraction and relaxation of my muscles improves my strength and flexibility. Muscular response time is 35 milliseconds for conscious or reflex action. Learning acrobatics and martial arts would require little training. I have somatic awareness. This is not even it, bro. I have somatic awareness of kidney function, nutrient absorption, glandular secretions. I'm even conscious of the role that neurotransmitters play in my thoughts. This state of consciousness involves mental activity more intense than any epinephrine boosted stress situation. Part of my mind is maintaining a condition that would kill a normal body and mind within minutes. And as I adjust the programming of my mind, I experience the ebb and flow of all the substances that trigger my emotional reactions, boost my attention, or subtly, shape my attitudes. Ooh. And then, and then I look outward. Blinding, joyous, fearful symmetry surrounds me. So much is incorporated within patterns now that the entire universe verges on resolving itself into a picture. I'm closing in on the ultimate gestalt, the context in which all knowledge fits and is illuminated, a mandala, the music of the spheres, cosmos. I seek enlightenment, not spiritual, but rational. I must go still further to reach it, but this time the goal will not be perpetually retreating from my fingertips. Now, with my mind's language, the distance between myself and enlightenment is precisely calculable. I've sighted. I've sighted my final destination. Now, now, okay, now I must plan my next actions. First, there are the simple enhancements that I need, right? To self preservation. So I start with martial arts training. I remember this movie I watched. It's called The Matrix. I saw Neo, right, doing some karate in the simulation. What I will do, I will watch some tournaments to study possible attacks. Though I will take only defensive action, I can move rapidly enough to avoid contact with even the fastest striking techniques. And this will let me protect myself and disarm any street criminals, right? Should I be assaulted. Meanwhile, I must also eat copious amounts of food to meet my brain's nourishment requirements and given increased efficiency in my metabolism. What I'll also do is I'm going to shave my scalp. I'm going to shave my scalp to allow greater radiative cooling for heightened blood flow to my head, right? No more beanies. No more beanies. My head needs to be cool, right? I need to heighten blood flow. And then there is the primary goal, decoding these patterns. For further improvements to my mind, artificial enhancements are the only possibility. A direct computer mind link. Permitting mind downloading is what I need, just like Neo. But I must create a new technology to implement it. Neuralink fucking sucks right now. They don't even see this shit. Anything based on digital computation will be inadequate. What I have in mind requires nanoscale structures based on neural networks. So, once I have the basic ideas laid out, okay, I set my mind to multiprocessing. One section of my mind deriving a branch of mathematics that reflects the network's behavior. Another developing a process for replicating the formation of neural pathways on a molecular scale in a self-repairing bioceramic medium. A third devising tactics for guiding private industrial R&D to produce what I'll need. I cannot waste time. I will introduce explosive theoretical and technical breakthroughs so that my new industry will hit the ground running. I've gone into the outside world to re-observe society. The sign language of emotion that I once knew has been replaced by a matrix of interrelated equations. Lines of force twist and elongate between people, objects, institution, ideas. It's all an overlay. These individuals are tragically like marionettes, right? Independently, they're animate, but they're bound by a web that they choose not to see. And they could resist if they wished, but so few of them do. At the moment, I'm sitting in a bar. 3 stools to my right sits a man. Familiar with this type of establishment, who looks around and notices a couple in a dark corner booth. He smiles, motions for the bartender to come over, and leans forward to speak confidently about the couple. Oh, he didn't whisper. Confidently about the couple. I don't need to listen to know what he's saying. He's lying to the bartender. Very easily. Extemporaneously. A compulsive liar. And not out of a desire for a life more exciting than his own, but to revel in his facility for deceiving others. He knows the bartender is detached, merely affecting interest, which is true. But he knows the bartender is still fooled, which is also true. My sensitivity, at this point, right? My sensitivity to the body language of others has increased to the point where I can make these observations without sight or sound. I can smell the pheromones exuded by his skin. And to an extent, my muscles can even detect the tension within his, perhaps by their electric field. These channels can't convey precise information, but the impressions I receive provide ample basis for extrapolation. They add texture to the web. Normal humans may detect these emanations subliminally. I will work on becoming more attuned to them. Then perhaps I can try consciously controlling my own expressions. I've developed abilities reminiscent of mind control schemes offered by tabloid advertisements. My control over my somatic emanations now lets me provoke precise reactions in others. With pheromones and muscle tension, I can cause another person to respond with anger, fear, sympathy, or sexual arousal. Certainly enough to win friends and influence people. I can even induce a self sustaining reaction in others by associating a particular response with a sense of satisfaction. I can create a positive reinforcement loop. And like biofeedback, the person's body will strengthen the reaction on its own. And I'll use this on corporate presidents to create support for the industries that I'll need. We're about to take a small break, folks. Thank you for sticking along. It has been more than an hour. What we will do is we will take a short break and maybe just for a minute, and then we're going to continue reading this, and we're going to continue the story called Understand by Ted Chiang. See you all in a minute and a half. Welcome back. We are reading Understand by Ted Chiang. We are now going to get into the final part of our story. So far, we have observed that we've reached a state that's very, very uncommon. Nobody is at the same level. And what we have realized is we need to now work with other people. Not only are we doing things ourselves, but we have figured out the patterns to influence other people to do those things as well. And for the new technologies that we want to make, we need to influence other industries, right? So what we're going to do is let's return. At this point, I can no longer dream in any normal sense. I lack anything that would qualify as a subconscious, and I control all the maintenance functions performed by my brain. So, normal REM sleep tasks are obsolete. There are moments when my grasp on my mind slips, but they cannot be called dreams. Meta hallucinations, perhaps. Sheer torture. These are periods during which I'm detached. I understand how my mind generates the strange visions, but I'm paralyzed and unable to respond. I can scarcely identify what I see. Images of bizarre, transfinite self references and modifications that even I find nonsensical. My mind is taxing the resources of my brain. A biological structure of this size and complexity can just barely sustain a self knowing psyche. But the self knowing psyche is also self regulating to an extent. I give my mind full use of what's available and restrain it from expanding beyond that. But it's difficult. I've got my skull, I'm cramped inside a bamboo cage that doesn't let me sit down or stand up. And if I try to relax or try to extend myself fully, then agony, madness, I'm hallucinating. I see my mind imagining possible configurations it could assume and then collapsing. I witness my own delusions, my visions of what form my mind might take when I grasp the ultimate gestalts. Will I achieve ultimate self awareness? Could I discover the components that make up my own mental gestalts? Would I penetrate racial memory? Would I find innate knowledge of morality? I might determine whether mind could be spontaneously generated from matter and understand what relates consciousness with the rest of the universe. I might see how to merge object and subject, the zero experience. Or perhaps I would find that the mind gestalt cannot be generated and some sort of intervention is required. Perhaps I would see the soul, the ingredient of consciousness that surpasses physicality. Proof of God? I would behold the meaning, the true character of existence. I would be enlightened. It must be euphoric to experience. My mind collapses back into a state of sanity. I must keep a tighter rein over myself. When I'm in control at the metaprogramming level, my mind is perfectly self repairing. I could restore myself from states that resemble delusion or amnesia. But if I drift too far on the metaprogramming level, my mind might become an unstable structure, and then I would slide into a state beyond mere insanity. I will program my mind to forbid itself from moving beyond its own reprogramming range. These hallucinations strengthen my resolve to create an artificial brain. Only with such a structure will I be able to actually perceive those gestalts instead of merely dreaming about them. To achieve enlightenment, I'll need to exceed another critical mass in terms of neuronal analogs. I open my eyes. It's 2 hours, 28 minutes, and 10 seconds, 11 seconds since I closed my eyes to rest, though not to sleep. I rise from my bed. I request a listing of my stock's performance on my terminal. I look down at the flat screen and freeze. The screen shouts at me. It tells me that there is another person with an enhanced mind. Five of my investments have demonstrated losses. They're not precipitous, but they're large enough that I would have detected them in the body language of the stockbrokers. Reading down this alphabetical list, the initial letters of the corporations whose stock values have dropped are C, E, G, O, R, which when rearranged spell Greco, Greco. Someone is sending me a message. There's someone else out there like me. There must have been another comatose patient who received a third injection of hormone K. And he erased his file from the FDA database before I accessed it. And he supplied false input to the doctor's account so they wouldn't notice it. He too stole another ampule of the hormone, contributing to the FDA's closing of their files, and with his whereabouts unknown to the authorities. He's reached my level. He must have recognized me through the investment patterns of my false identities. He would have been superficial. He'd have to been super critical to do that. As an enhanced individuals, he could have effected sudden and precise changes to trigger my losses and attract my attention. I check various data services for stock quotes. The entries on my listing are correct, so my counterpart didn't simply edit the values from my account alone. He altered the selling pattern of the stock of 5 unrelated corporations for the sake of a word. It makes for quite a demonstration. I consider it no mean feat. But presumably, now that I'm thinking, his treatment began before mine did, right? Meaning that he's farther along than me, but by how much? I began extrapolating his likely progress and will incorporate new information as I acquire it. The critical question: is he friend or foe? Was this merely a good natured demonstration of his power, or an indication of his intent to ruin me? The amounts I lost were moderate. Does this indicate a concern for me or for the corporations which he had to manipulate? Given all the harmless ways he could have attracted my attention, I must assume that he is to some degree hostile. In which case, I am at risk, vulnerable to anything from another prank to a fatal attack. As a precaution, I will leave immediately. Obviously, if he were actively hostile, I'd be dead already. His sending a message means that he wishes us to play games. I'll have to place myself on equal terms with him, hide my location, determine his identity, and then attempt to communicate. I pick a random city, Memphis. I switch off the flat screen, get dressed, pack a travel bag, and collect all the emergency cash in the apartment, including my crypto wallets. In a Memphis hotel, I begin working at the suite's datanet terminal. The first thing I do is reroute my activities through several dummy terminals to an ordinary police trace. My queries will appear to originate from different terminals all over the state of Utah. A military intelligence facility might be able to track them in a terminal in Houston. Continuing the trace to Memphis would try and even me. An alarm program at the Houston terminal will alert me if someone has successfully traced me there. How many clues to his identity has my twin erased? Lacking all FDA files, I'll begin with the files of courier services in various cities, looking for deliveries from the FDA to hospitals during the time of the hormone case study. Then, a check of the hospital's brain damage cases at the time, and I'll have a place to start. Even if any of this information remains, it's of minor value. What will be crucial is an examination of the investment patterns to find the traces of an enhanced mind. This will take time. His name is Reynolds. He is originally from Phoenix, and his early progress closely parallels mine. He received his third injection 6 months and 4 days ago, giving him a head start over me of 15 days. He didn't erase any of the obvious records. He waits for me to find them. I estimate that he's been supercritical for 12 days, twice as long as I have been. I now see his hand in the investment patterns, but the task of locating Reynolds is Herculean. I imagine usage logs across the datanet. I examine them to identify the accounts he's penetrated. I have 12 lines open on my terminal. I am using 2 single handed keyboards and a throat mic so I can work on 3 queries simultaneously. Most of my body is immobile to prevent fatigue. I'm ensuring proper blood flow, regular muscle contraction and relaxation, and removal of lactic acid. While I absorb all the data I see, studying the melody within the notes, looking for the epicenter of a tremor in the web. Hours pass. We both scan gigabytes of data, circling each other. His location is Philadelphia. He waits for me to arrive. I'm riding in a mud-splattered taxi to Reynolds' apartment. Judging by the databases and agencies Reynolds has queried over the past months, his private research involves bioengineered microorganisms for toxic waste disposal, inertial containment for practical fusion, and subliminal dissemination of information through societies of various structures. He plans to save the world, to protect it from itself, and his opinion of me is therefore unfavorable. I've shown no interest in the affairs of the external world and made no investigations for aiding the normals. Neither of us will be able to convert the other. I view the world as incidental to my aims, while he cannot allow someone with enhanced intelligence to work purely in self interest. My plans for mind computer links will have enormous repercussions for the world, provoking governments or particular reactions that would interfere with his plans. As I am proverbially not part of the solution, I am part of the problem. If we were members of a society of enhanced minds, the nature of human interaction would be of a different order. But in this society, we have unavoidably become juggernauts by whose measure the actions of normals are inconsequential. Even if we were 12,000 miles apart, we couldn't ignore each other. A resolution is necessary. Both of us have dispensed with several rounds of games. There are 1,000 ways we could have attempted to kill one another, from painting neurotoxin laced DMSO on a doorknob to ordering a surgical strike from a military kill sat. We both could have swept the physical area and data net for each of the myriad possibilities beforehand and set more traps for each other's sweeps. But neither of us has done any of that and has felt a check the need for those has felt the need to check for those things. A simple infinite regression of second guessing and double thinking has dismissed those. What will be decisive are the preparations that we could not predict. The taxi stops. I pay the driver and walk up to the apartment building. The electric lock on the door opens for me. I take off my coat and climb 4 flights. The door to Reynolds' apartment is also open. I walk down the entryway to the living room, hearing a hyper accelerated polyphony from a digital synthesizer. Evidently, it's his own work. The sounds are modulated in ways undetectable to normal hearing, and even I can't discern any pattern to them. An experiment in high information density music, perhaps. There's a large swivel chair in the room, its back turned towards me. Reynolds is not visible, and he is restricting his somatic emanations to comatose levels. I imply my presence and my recognition of his identity. Reynolds. Acknowledgement. Greco. The chair turns around smoothly, slowly. He smiles at me and shuts off the synthesizer at his side. Gratification. A pleasure to meet you. To communicate, we are exchanging fragments from the somatic language of the normals, a shorthand version of the vernacular. Each phrase takes a tenth of a second. I give a suggestion of regret. A shame it must be as enemies. Wistful agreement, then supposition. Indeed, imagine how we could change the world acting in concert. Two enhanced minds. Such an opportunity missed. True. Acting cooperatively would produce achievements far outstripping any we might attain individually. And in any interaction would be incredibly fruitful. How satisfying it would be simply to have a discussion with someone who can match my speed, who can offer an idea that is new to me, who can hear the same melodies I do. He desires the same. It pains us both to think that one of us will not leave this room alive. An offer. Do you wish to share what we've learned in the past 6 months? He knows what my answer is. We will speak aloud since somatic language has no technical vocabulary. Reynolds says quickly and quietly 5 words. They are more pregnant with meaning than any stanza of poetry. Each word provides a logical toehold I can mount after extracting everything implicit in the preceding ones. Together, they encapsulate a revolutionary insight into sociology. Using somatic language, he indicates that it was among the first he ever achieved. I came to a similar realization, but formulated it differently. I immediately counter with 7 words. 4 that summarize the distinctions between my insight and his, and 3 that describe a non-obvious result of the distinctions. He responds. We continue. We are like 2 bards, each cueing the other to extemporize another stanza, jointly composing an epic poem of knowledge. Within moments, we accelerate, talking over each other's words, but hearing every nuance until we are absorbing, concluding, and responding continuously, simultaneously, synergistically. Many minutes pass. I learn much from him, and he from me. It's exhilarating to be suddenly awash in ideas whose implications would take me days to consider fully. But we're also gathering strategic information. I infer the extent of his unspoken knowledge, compare it with my own, and simulate his corresponding inferences. For there is always the awareness that this must come to an end. And the formulation of our exchanges renders ideological difference luminously clear. Reynolds hasn't witnessed the beauty that I have. He stood before lovely insights oblivious to them. The sole gestalt that inspires him is the one I ignored, that of the planetary society, of the biosphere. I am a lover of beauty, he of humanity. Each feels that the other has ignored great opportunities. He has an unmentioned plan for establishing a global network of influence to create world prosperity. To execute it, he'll employ a number of people, some of whom he'll give simple heightened intelligence, some meta self awareness. A few of them will pose threats to him. Why assume such a risk for the sake of the normals? Your indifference towards the normals would be justified if you were enlightened, he says. Your realm wouldn't intersect theirs. But as long as you and I can still comprehend their affairs, we can't ignore them. I can measure the distance between our respective moral stances precisely. See the stress between their incompatible radiating lines. What motivates him is not simply compassion or altruism, but it's something that entails both those things. On the other hand, I concentrate only on understanding the sublime. What about the beauty visible from enlightenment? Doesn't it attract you? You know, you know what kind of structure would be required to hold an enlightened consciousness. I have no reason to wait the time it would take to establish the necessary industries. He considers intelligence to be a means, while I view it as an end in itself. Greater intelligence would be of little use to him. At his present level, he can find the best possible solution to any problem within the realm of human experience, and many beyond. All he would require is sufficient time to implement his solution. There's no point in further discussion. By mutual assent, we begin. It's meaningless to speak of an element of surprise when we time our attacks. Our awareness can't become more acute with forewarning. It's not affording a courtesy to each other when we agree to begin our battle. It's actualizing the inevitable. In the models of each other that we've constructed from our inferences, there are gaps, there are lacunae, the internal psychological developments and discoveries that each has made. No echoes have radiated from those spaces. No strands have tied them to the world web. Until now. I begin. I concentrate on initiating two reinforcing loops in him. One is very simple. It increases blood pressure rapidly and enormously If it were to continue unchecked for over a second, this loop would raise his blood pressure to stroke levels, perhaps 400 or 300, perhaps 400 over 300, and burst capillaries in his brain. Reynolds detects it immediately, though it's clear from our conversation that he never investigated the inducement of biofeedback loops in others. He recognizes what's happening. Once he does, he reduces his heart rate and dilates the blood vessels throughout his body. But it is the other, the other subtler reinforcing loop that's my real attack. This is a weapon I've been developing ever since my search for Reynolds began. This loop causes his neurons to dramatically overproduce neurotransmitter antagonists, preventing impulses from crossing his synapses and shutting down brain activity. I've been radiating this loop at a much higher intensity than the other. As Reynolds is parrying the ostensible attack, he experiences a slight weakening of his concentration, masked by the effects of the heightened blood pressure. A second later, his body begins to amplify the effect on its own. Reynolds is shocked to feel his own thoughts blurring. He searches for the precise mechanism. He'll identify it soon, but he won't be able to scrutinize it for long. Once his brain function has been reduced to the level of a normal, I should be able to manipulate his mind easily. Hypnotic techniques can make him regurgitate most of the information his enhanced mind possesses. I inspect his somatic expressions, watching them betray his diminishing intelligence. The regression is unmistakable. And then it stops. Reynolds is in equilibrium. I'm stunned. He was able to break the reinforcing loop. He has stopped the most sophisticated offensive I could mount. Next, he reverses the damage already done. Even starting with reduced capabilities, he can correct the balance of neurotransmitters, and within seconds, Reynolds is fully restored. I too was transparent to him. During our conversation, he deduced that I had investigated reinforcing loops, and as we communicated, he derived a general preventative without my detecting it. Then he observed the specifics of my particular attack while it was working and learned how to reverse its effects. I'm astonished at his discernment, his speed, his stealth. He acknowledges my skill. A very interesting technique. Appropriate, given your self-absorption. I saw no indication when abruptly he projects a different somatic signature, one that I recognize. He used it when he walked behind me at a grocery store 3 days ago. The aisle was crowded. Behind me, around me were an old woman wheezing behind her air filter and a thin teenager on an acid trip, wearing a liquid crystal shirt of shifting psychedelic patterns. Reynolds slipped behind me, his mind on the pawn mag stands. His surveillance didn't inform him of my reinforcing loops, but it did permit a more detailed picture of my mind. A possibility I anticipated. I reformulate my psyche, incorporating random elements for unpredictability. The equations of my mind now bear little resemblance to those of my normal consciousness, undermining any assumptions Reynolds may have made, and rendering ineffectual any psyche-specific weapons of his. I project the equivalent of a smile. Reynolds smiles back. Have you ever considered? Suddenly, he projects only silence. He is about to speak, but I can't predict What? Then it comes as a whisper. Self destruct commands, Greco? As he says it, a lacuna in my reconstruction of him fills and overflows, the implications coloring all that I know about him. He means the word, the sentence that, when uttered, would destroy the mind of the listener. Reynolds is claiming that the myth is true, that every mind has such a trigger built in, that for every person there is a sentence that can reduce him to an idiot, a lunatic, a catatonic. And he is claiming he knows the one for me. I immediately tune out all sensory input, directing it to an insulated buffer of short term memory. Then I conceive a simulator of my own consciousness to receive the input and absorb it at reduced speed. As a meta programmer, I will monitor the equations of the simulation indirectly. Only after the sensory information has been confirmed as safe will I actually receive it. If the simulator is destroyed, my consciousness should be isolated, and I'll retrace the individual steps leading to the crash and derive guidelines for reprogramming my psyche. I get everything in place by the time Reynolds has finished saying my name. His next sentence could be the destruct command. I'm now receiving my sensory input with 120 milliseconds time lag. I re examine my analysis of the human mind, explicitly searching for evidence to verify his assertion. Meanwhile, I give my response lightly, casually. Hit me with your best shot. Don't worry, it's not on the tip of my tongue. My search produces something. I curse myself. There's a very subtle back door to a psyche's design, which I lacked the necessary mindset to notice, whereas my weapon was one born of introspection. His is something only a manipulator could originate. Reynolds knows that I've built my defenses. Is his trigger command designed to circumvent them? I continue deriving the nature of the trigger command's actions. What are you waiting for? He's confident that additional time won't allow me to construct a defense. Try to guess. So smug. Can he actually toy with me so easily? I arrive at a theoretical description of a trigger's effect on normals. A single command can reduce any subcritical mind to a tabula rasa, but an undetermined degree of customization is needed for enhanced minds. The erasure has distinctive symptoms which my simulator can alert me to, but those are the symptoms of a process calculable by me. By definition, the destruct command is that specific equation beyond my ability to imagine. Would my metaprogrammer collapse while diagnosing the simulator's condition? Have you used the destruct command on normals? I begin calculating what's needed to generate a customized destruct command. Once, as an experiment to a drug dealer, afterward I concealed the evidence with a blow to the temple. It becomes obvious that the generation of such a phrase is a colossal task. Generating a trigger requires intimate knowledge of my mind. I extrapolate what he could have learned about me. It appears to be insufficient given my reprogramming, but he may have techniques of observation unknown to me. I am acutely aware of the advantage he's gained by studying the outside world. You will have to do this many times. His regret is evident. His plan can't be implemented without more deaths, those of normal humans by strategic necessity, and those of a few enhanced assistants of his, whose temptation by greater heights would interfere. After using the command, Reynolds may reprogram them, or me, as savants, having focused intentions and restricted self metaprogrammers. Such deaths are a necessary cost of his plan. I make no claims of being a saint, merely a savior. Normals might think him a tyrant because they mistake him for one of them. And they've never trusted their own judgment. They can't fathom that Reynolds is equal to the task. His judgment is optimal in questions of their affairs, and then notions of greed and ambition do not apply to an enhanced mind. In a histrionic gesture, Reynolds raises his hand, forefinger extended, as if to make a point. I don't have sufficient information to generate his destruct command, so for the moment, I can only attend to defense. If I can survive his attack, I may have time to launch another one of my own. With his finger upraised, he says, "Understand, at first, I don't. And then, horrifyingly, I do." He didn't design the command to be spoken. It's not a sensory trigger at all. It's a memory trigger. The command is made out of a string of perceptions, individually harmless, that he planted in my brain like time bombs. The mental structures that were formed as a result of those memories are now resolving into a pattern, forming a gestalt that defines my dissolution. I'm intuiting the word myself. Immediately, my mind is working faster than ever before. Against my will, a lethal realization is suggesting itself to me. I'm trying to halt the associations, but these memories can't be suppressed. The process occurs inexorably as a consequence of my awareness. And like a man falling from a height, I'm forced to watch. Milliseconds pass. My death passes before my eyes. An image of the grocery store when Reynolds passed by. The psychedelic shirt the boy was wearing. Reynolds had programmed the display to implant a suggestion within me, ensuring that my randomly reprogrammed psyche remained receptive. Even then, no time. All I can do is metaprogram myself over and over randomly at a furious pace. An act of desperation, possibly crippling. The strange, modulated sounds that I heard when I first entered Reynolds' apartment. I absorbed the fatal insights before I had any defenses raised. I tear apart my psyche, but still the conclusion grows clearer, the resolution sharper. myself constructing the simulator, designing those defense structures, gave me the perspective needed to recognize the gestalt. I concede his greater ingenuity. It bodes well for his endeavor. Pragmatism avails a savior far more than aestheticism. I wonder what he intends to do after he saved the world. I comprehend the word and means by which it operates. And so I dissolve. Understand. Welcome back. Welcome back. That was our story for tonight. Understand from the book Stories of Your Life and Others, a short story named Understand by Ted Chiang. Thank you all for listening to this narration. Thank you all for being here, whether live or whether you're listening to a recording of this. I hope you found that interesting. That was Understand by Ted Chiang, bro. Ooh. Damn, bro. Damn. God damn. Longest bro stream yet. For sure. Crazy, bro. Reynolds. Genuine meta manushya. Crazy, bro. Crazy. What a story, bro. What a story. Amazing. We might do another session in the future where we talk about the story, where we break it down, where we discuss. Maybe we interpret the ending, because there could be multiple interpretations. With that, folks, we're going to enter a final hail break of tonight. We're going to end this off with a little bit of music to calm you down, to relax you, to prepare you for your next task ahead. I will see you in the next stream. We're going to play a few minutes of music, and then this video will tune out. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to read through some of the comments now while I play some music for you.